But for me, nothing will ever top. No Galaxy player in my mind will ever top Robbie Keane. And what he meant to the team, I feel like he really took this Galaxy team to a whole new level, helped them win 3 MLS Cups in his time here. And he took that Landon Donovan and Beckham team and really elevated it. And I think no player had more of an impact on the field for on-field stuff than Robbie Keane did in his short time. And for me, he'll be my Galaxy GOAT.
Hey guys, really quick, before you get to the video, do me one quick favor. Like the video down below if you haven't already done so. Subscribe to the channel. GOLZtv is on this mission of growing the beautiful game in North America. Whether you call it soccer, footy, football, doesn't really matter. We want to see the game grow in the States, in broader North America. Can't do it without your help. Again, just like the video down below, subscribe to the channel, and enjoy. All right, Eli Lesser, episode 55 of Box to Box, bro. First off, before we jump into anything, man, how are you?
I'm doing okay. I'm very excited for everything that's to come this summer. I just got off a call talking about some MLS All-Star Game festivities. So if any of you guys are out there and you want to see, hey, this guy makes content, but can he actually play ball? Well, you'll see me maybe come off the bench for like 5 minutes, but just keep that in mind. But the Body Armor Cup, I won it last year, and I'm back to defend my title, and I'm very excited.
Yes, sir. Hell yeah. Hey, bro, 5 glorious minutes, right? Five amazing minutes. Hell yeah.
Only because they required me to play at least 5 minutes. So that's why I was on.
That's about all that I give any game, any pickup game in this day and age, bro. My cardio is not nearly what it used to be. But look, man, I appreciate you being here. I think this is going to be a fantastic episode. I think anybody who follows Major League Soccer in any form or fashion and likes to keep up with the game through the lens of independent content creation, bro, you got to be one of the top of their list, right? Everybody, for the most part, should kind of have a strong idea of who you are. You're promoting the game in a way that I feel like others who have jumped into this space recently have really just kind of learned from. So as we do on Box to Box, man, I want to kind of tell some of your story, how you were brought into this game, the earliest days, and scaling that up to what you're doing today, what you're most excited about when you think about MLS moving forward. So we'll talk about all of it, man. But our audience already knows the question I'm going to ask. I start every show off this way. Eli, my man, who are you today?
It is a very tough question. I know you mentioned that other people get stumped when they're asked this question, but I'm in like a very transitional point in my life right now to where honestly, I don't know who I am. I just graduated college. I am doing content full time, but not really getting paid full-time money. So I'm just kind of living right now. And I feel like I'm like in a waiting room, if that makes sense. That's who Eli is right now. He's in a waiting room, waiting to be let in through the door. Sorry about that. And I'm just like in a weird purgatory right now. And I guess that's who Eli is. But on top of that, I'm just some Jewish kid that makes soccer content. I guess that's Eli Lesser.
I love that, bro. I love that, man. That's a great way to summarize yourself. And in a waiting room, waiting to be let in. I feel like that's so many of us right now, right? So many of us who support soccer in America, we're waiting to kind of see what happens, what's the next step, how do we grow this thing? And dude, you've been doing this, you've been at the forefront of it now for years on end. So I think at the end of the day, I would say when it comes to the waiting room, you're at the front of that line, right? Let me ask you before we jump into kind of the first, I guess you call segment of the show today with the early days of it all. But I know you mentioned, first off, you graduated. Congrats, bro. That's awesome. I think, the journalism degree probably going to serve you extremely well as you continue to create content. But I'm just personally curious to kick things off here. What are you waiting for the most that you would say right now, right? Waiting to be let in? Are you looking for a full-time content creation career with the league themselves? Are you hoping to just scale up what you're doing now tenfold? Like, what's the dream scenario for you?
Yeah, I actually don't want to be independent anymore. I didn't really go to college to be independent per se.
Yeah.
And I'm tired of working by myself. I like being around a team, and I feel like, I've reached kind of a ceiling for what I've done. And I feel like, to do all these things by myself and to release as much content as I do by myself on a daily basis, I feel like I've reached a ceiling, and I'm ready to like launch myself forward in a way.
Yeah.
The dream would be to work for the league as like a host. I mean, eventually my goal in life is to be at Apple TV basically right now, hosting 360 because I think, they could use a more energetic person.
You're not wrong.
No
You're not
shade.
wrong.
But I think I would serve that very well, especially during the MLS after dark hours when they're all tired and want to go home. I come in with the crackhead hours and I'm, just on a different level. But I want to be a host. I want to work for the league. I think working for the league might be better than me for working for a club, just because I've built up this following as This Week in MLS.
Yeah.
Covering the entire league. Although everyone knows that I'm a Galaxy fan and that I probably talk more about the Galaxy than any other team. Like I am This Week in MLS, so keeping that part of me would be great. But I'm getting to a point where I will probably take anything I could get, if that's with a club or if that's on camera or off camera. I'd like to be on camera, but if that's not the path for me right now, then that's not the path for me. But I'd like to get out of my childhood bedroom and be in an actual space and be able to live my life.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, look, I think you painted a great picture for us there for the audience in terms of what you're going after. And guys, if anybody here is not following This Week in MLS, we'll link a ton of his socials and his channels down below. But I mean, it runs deep. The waters run very deep in terms of content. This guy's been doing it since I don't what 2016, 2017. I mean,
2015, yeah.
2015, yeah. So even before I started kind of tuning in, and man, I think that there's a lot for aspiring content creators to pick up. But I think, piggybacking on what you just said, there's a lot to back this dream scenario that you have of wanting something bigger, right? I like the idea you have around Apple TV. I think a lot of us who tune into MLS 360 will wholeheartedly agree that an MLS after dark type of show where the hinges kind of come off a little bit. I like that. I think the MLS needs more of that content right now, and they need to be working with more independent content creators at this moment. But year one, I think that this 10-year deal, we're in the infancy of it all. Who knows what can happen, right? But in regards to your journey today, my man, let's start at the very beginning with the show, with Box to Box. We like to kind of scale your journey up from the earliest days, the earliest memories you have of soccer. Maybe it's as a fan, maybe it's as a player, right? Walk us through kind of how it all started for you. I know your passion is immense; it runs deep. But where did it all begin for you?
Yeah, it's very funny you mentioned, it could be as a fan or as a player, but I actually didn't know about soccer as a sport for the beginning of my childhood. I wasn't playing 5U or, like as a 5-year-old, as a 4-year-old.
Yeah.
Like when most people, baseball was originally my passion as a sport, playing wise, that's what I loved. But I heard about soccer growing up in Los Angeles in 2007 when David Beckham came to the Galaxy. That was my introduction to soccer. I had a grandpa who's from Israel. He loved European soccer, so he loved the idea of Beckham coming to the Galaxy and, being able to see him and all that stuff. So hearing about him coming to the Galaxy, that's around the time I started to pay attention to soccer. And a few years later, I really got into the Galaxy, especially around, when Robbie Keane joined the club. And that's where the true, deep passion for the game happened for me. And, it's funny. I became a player much later than everyone else did. And I became a player after I, started to love the sport and become passionately in love with it. And unlike a lot of soccer fans, my first exposure to soccer was with MLS, not with, EPL clubs or Barca or Real Madrid, like a lot of people who then eventually get into MLS. I am an MLS born and raised soccer fan. And, the rest of other leagues comes after that for me and came after that. And then I started This Week in MLS when I was 14. And I was attending a summer camp. And at the time, I was still like a baseball guy, but it was a broadcasting camp, sports broadcasting camp at UCLA. It was 1 week. It was the coolest thing ever. But I get there the first day. I'm wearing a gray hoodie and a Dodger hat. And I walk in, and everyone else are dudes my age wearing gray hoodies and Dodger hats. And at first I thought, this is the coolest thing. Everyone's like me. I'm going to have so many friends.
Yeah.
And then quickly that week, I learned how competitive broadcasting is. And because I had no idea, I was just, getting into it. And I realized I was the only kid there that had any sort of interest in soccer. So I started an Instagram account called This Week in MLS. I think it was actually originally news.mls or something, for that camp specifically, as I'm going to be the soccer guy at this camp. And then it became so much more throughout the years. But yeah, that happened. So I went to the camp in 2014 and I started the page right before I went back to camp in 2015.
And how old were you when you attended the camp?
Yeah, so 14, or I think I actually turned 14 during my first week at that camp, and then I turned 15. My birthday was always during that camp, which was fun. Um,
Interesting.
and I turned 15 during my second year at that camp in 2015.
Dude, and you knew back then you wanted broadcasting. This is the career that I want to
Oh yeah.
have. I was made for this. I mean, like, what did you love most about that ambition that you had?
Yeah, it's funny because growing up, I collected all these sports cards. I would obsess over their stats. I would know everyone's, batting averages and how many 3 points they made, like 3 pointers they made in basketball. I'm also a big basketball fan. Stuff like that. And then, my mom and I would watch every Dodger game growing up, and I would always speak over the TV. Even though like the Dodgers had the great Vin Scully, and my mom would always tell me to shut up because, she wanted to listen to Vin. She's like, listen to Vin. He's great. Listen to Vin. And then one day I was at baseball practice and my mom came across this broadcasting camp and she's like, this sounds like the perfect thing for you. And she sent me, and it was the perfect thing for me because after that first week was like the best week of my life. And, every year that was the best week of my summer. And even through last year, I came back after a couple years off as a counselor, and it meant so much to me to like, give back to the kids who I kind of, who I was, and that's kind of what I want to do with my content in a way as an MLS creator where, you guys could probably tell my content isn't for, the boomers out there. I make content specifically for, the kids who were my age when I started This Week in MLS. I aim towards that demographic, and I try to make people into MLS fans the way that I became an MLS fan, and like the stuff that I found interesting when I became an MLS fan. I want to pass that on to the new generation. So that's where I guess a lot of my following comes from. My demographic is very low. My age numbers are very low.
Yeah, yeah, definitely not the standard MLS demographic of millennials and above, right? Age
Yeah.
30, 35 and up, where that ends up becoming, I think, a lot of who consumes the content that other creators tend to be making around this game
Mhm.
because they just see it as that's who our fan base is. But I agree with you wholeheartedly. The segments that you do, whether it's the I can't remember the exact name, the kicks
Kicks and kits.
kits,
Yeah.
yeah, segments like that, right, where you're just offering cultural content, culturally relevant content around the game, specifically from an MLS standpoint. Yeah, bro, I wholeheartedly agree with you. I think you're definitely separating yourself from the pack. I want to go back to something you just mentioned, though. You mentioned that first week of camp, wanting to be the soccer guy. When you left camp, right, and you decided, all right, I'm kind of running with this idea of being the soccer guy. Galaxy was probably easy for you, them being in your backyard. As you start watching more games and getting into the
Mhm.
league a little bit, did you find yourself getting curious about MLS as a whole, maybe soccer in North America, outside of the US? Like, how far did those waters really run?
Yeah, so first I became like the biggest nerd about MLS history. I was like, the league is very young. There's not, 100 years of history I have to catch up to. So let me really hone in on the first 20 years and really learn about who were the legends and stuff like that. And I really just dove into every single MLS team at the time, even though obviously I was a Galaxy guy. And the Galaxy weren't down bad yet. They were still, considered a really good team. So that
Yep.
was great. LAFC didn't even exist yet. So um I was just, becoming obsessed with every single player, what their stories were. I loved the super draft. I wanted to know where every player went to college. And that stuff. So I very much geeked out about all the very nerdy MLS things. And I thought it was pretty cool that MLS was more of like an American type of league because I was coming from a background of, supporting other American sports. So MLS, I was very used to that type of format. And then I realized that the rest of the world doesn't do that. And I was like, oh my God. So just, yeah, whenever you hear me talk about MLS, just know like I come from the background of someone who didn't watch or know about any other soccer across the world until he got into MLS. And then eventually throughout the years, I have a lot of family in Israel, so I support their local club. And
Yep.
then, I flip-flopped between EPL teams throughout the years, because I find it very hard to get into to choose a Premier League team for some reason, because I don't have any sort of connection.
Yeah.
And I really struggle to follow teams if I don't feel like I have a personal connection to them. And I've flip-flopped between Tottenham solely because Robbie Keane came from there, not even any players that I liked at the time that I became a Tottenham fan. So then that didn't last. And then DeAndre Yedlin, who I love, went to Newcastle. So I became a Newcastle fan briefly. And then I have so many close friends who are Man United fans, and they basically peer pressured me into watching being a Man United fan. But if I'm being honest, I've probably watched like 2 matches this season, so I'm not really a United fan. But then all the City fans are like, "Oh, typical United fan, not actually watching." But I don't really have that sort of emotional attachment to United. But now with Angel City FC, I'm fully supporting women's soccer now more than ever. And I went to the Angel City FC match last night, and I'm all in on them. But that's the thing; they play in Los Angeles, and that's something I can't stress enough to anyone who might critique MLS but lives in the U.S. It's like, if you have a MLS club nearby you, like how much more of a emotional connection can you get than that? Like
Yep.
the Galaxy, they were the team of the city. And that's why it was so easy for me to fall in love with them. I could go to their matches whenever. I can't fly to England every single weekend to go see Man United. That's like a once in a lifetime, mate, if that opportunity. So that's always been the reason why like I haven't really dove into other soccer leagues, at least content wise. Also, so many other people do it. I'm someone who always likes to do something that no one else is doing. And, I always get these DMs from kids wanting to start doing things like me. And the one thing I always tell them is, find something that no one else is doing in this space and be consistent with it. And that's what I try to bring with my content every day as well.
Yeah, man, I love that. And I think anybody can see that, right? You start scrolling through your Instagram page, you start scrolling through any one of your channels, right? Your TikTok channel, whatever it may be, and you can see it. Like, it's just your content stands out in a unique way because it goes against the grain, right? Most people, and I agree with you in a lot of ways. Most people who cover soccer or are launching a content channel for the first time, it's so easy to try and pick up the Premier League, right? Because it's so widely talked about globally, but from a viewer standpoint, a casual viewer standpoint, it's like, why would I listen to an American talk about the Premier League when I can go listen to UK fans talk about the Premier League, right? So I think that's something that a lot of aspiring creators, it gets lost in translation. Figuring out how to stand out in a very saturated, very crowded space. I think you've somewhat figured that out. And I think others are going to start kind of following suit. But it's really interesting, man. As you were talking about why you support the teams that you support, it sounds like LA and your environment just had a massive impact on your fandom. I'm really curious. You mentioned before you got into this game back when Beckham, kind of transferred over to the Galaxy. I remember that transfer.
Mm-hmm.
I remember it being almost as big, in my opinion, at least impactful, as when he moved from United to Real Madrid. And when I say impactful, meaning like the same amount of cameras, same amount of paparazzi, same amount of media attention. It was all there. It was like, when this guy's still somewhat in his prime, why is he moving over to a league that's 10 years old? And so, it drew so much attention. And so easily, I feel like that was a very pivotal moment for a lot of casual fans to get a little bit deeper into this game. But if you can remember back then and kind of just paint a picture for us here, what was it? LA is very much a major market, a major sports town. Where was soccer on the totem pole? Right? Like, I know Dodgers are, Lakers, all these sports teams run very, very deep with their fan bases. Where was Galaxy, Chivas USA? Where was all of that at the time?
Yeah, so obviously soccer might not have been the biggest, in terms of the teams, except for I would argue that it was always the biggest played by everyone. You always, there's leagues everywhere, there's pickup games everywhere. And obviously there's a huge Mexican population in Los Angeles. And, probably to this day, like Club America and Chivas are as big, if not bigger than LAFC and the Galaxy in LA, just because of, those roots there. So I always saw the soccer, but I really didn't know about any sort of professional sports teams until, I missed the Beckham, like the hype in terms of, like all the crowds and the paparazzis. Cause, I was too young for that. I was 7 years old, but
Yeah.
I start seeing all these billboards popping up as, my mom's driving me to baseball practice or something, and I see this Beckham dude on there, and it's a big deal. And you don't really have to be a soccer fan to know who David Beckham is. I'm sure a lot of people don't even think of soccer as the first thing they know about David Beckham. If you talk to like someone who doesn't watch sports at all, but everyone knows who David Beckham is. And you know at the time, I didn't realize how big of a deal that was because I didn't really know much about soccer. But that was kind of where it shifted for sure. And definitely the brand of the Galaxy really made an imprint all over Los Angeles after that. And I think what a lot of people don't realize is how big the Galaxy were in Los Angeles for many years, and still are, because people think they're not there anymore because of LAFC, but that's just not true. You still see more billboards for the Galaxy than LAFC. And if you ask the casual sports fan in Los Angeles, about what they know about soccer, they know who the Galaxy are. A lot of people still don't know that LAFC exists. So that's just, maybe a Galaxy fan of me talking, but this is just me talking to people who like maybe are like basketball fans or something, but they don't really know anything about soccer. They know the Galaxy's existence, which is at this, sometimes all you could really ask for out of someone.
Yeah, I agree, man. And look, and what's crazy about the Galaxy's branding and just how long they've been around, the institution that they are from a soccer perspective. For any fan who maybe has come into this game in the last few seasons, I agree with Eli wholeheartedly. I would almost say that even outside of this country, MLS is almost, from a branding standpoint, directly associated with LA Galaxy. When you think about that club and how it's almost attached to how they view MLS as a whole. LA Galaxy resonates with what Landon Donovan, David Beckham, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, like all of these massive names that have come through the org, the championships that have been won by the club. Anybody who knows about Major League Soccer overseas probably knows about LA Galaxy. Probably has no idea who LAFC is, considered even with the recent championship they've won, right? So I think from a branding standpoint and just name recognition, Galaxy still carries so much weight. I think it's almost unfair to look at today's version of the team and the club and be like, yeah, that's who they are. It really depends on who you ask. So I agree with you wholeheartedly.
And to me, what's happening in the city of Los Angeles soccer wise is the same thing that's happening in Manchester. And I do, a lot of people, maybe a lot of Galaxy fans may give me flack for saying this because, they don't want to ever see themselves as like the second team in the city. But, I see very much Galaxy are the Man United and LAFC are the Man City right now.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that United can't get back to where they once were. But, they have the history, they have that. And then there's all of a sudden this younger brother who's, winning everything, buying everyone they want, stuff like that. That's always how I've seen it since LAFC's been here.
Yeah. Galaxy and United crawled, right? So City and LAFC could walk. And I think that's almost how you have to look at it again, regardless of what the results are right now. And I think, with certain moves they've made in the back office in the last couple of weeks, I mean, I think that Galaxy are going to find a way to turn things around. I'm really curious too, before we move on into your content creation career. Let me ask you this. I ask Galaxy fans all the time. You guys have had a ton of names come through this club, man. You came in when Bex came in, and he's arguably, in my opinion, probably the biggest name to have ever worn the kit. Yeah. But is there I don't know, in your opinion, is there, outside of Beckham, is there another sort of game changer, the most prolific signing that you can remember in your life as a fan? Was it Zlatan? Was it Robbie Keane? Was it Steven Gerrard? Like was it Donovan? Like who do you consider to be that game changer for the Galaxy over the years?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of announcements, obviously nothing beats Zlatan walking in with a lion. That was really cool. But for me, nothing will ever no Galaxy player in my mind will ever top Robbie Keane. And what he meant to the team, I feel like he really took this Galaxy team to a whole new level, helped them win 3 MLS Cups in his time here. And, he took that Landon Donovan and Beckham team and really elevated it. And I think no player had more of an impact on the field for on-field stuff than Robbie Keane did in his short time. And for me, he'll be my Galaxy GOAT forever. I know LD definitely is considered the Galaxy GOAT, and
Yeah.
he should be. But for me, like the streets love Robbie Keane the most. Like he'll forever be our GOAT. And yeah, for me, like if the Galaxy didn't have Robbie Keane, who knows how much I would have loved the team, how obsessed I would have become. Because when I equate, the years of me really getting into the league and getting into the Galaxy, it was highly because of Robbie Keane. That being said, he's actually my second favorite MLS player of all time, but Robbie Keane is just absolutely just like that guy for me at the Galaxy.
Yeah, very underrated player, and I would say across his entire career. It wasn't just the Galaxy.
Yeah.
Like even at like Spurs, right? Like everyone associated Spurs with him, but like the minute he left, it's like he doesn't get talked about enough with like the Harry Kanes of the world and any other
Yeah.
striker that's come through that club, right? So I think personally his whole career, maybe it's because he's Irish, I have no idea, and he's not like British per se or
Yeah,
English per se.
if he was English, he would have been, like the Jamie Vardy of that time.
Exactly. He scored so many goals at any given club he's ever been a part of, and so yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with you. Very underrated pick there. I like that. Is there on the other side of that? I think I see you post about this too, but maybe you have a different opinion now. Is there an opposite of the GOAT signing, right? Maybe someone who's just like the biggest flop of all time for the Galaxy.
I mean, you've seen my videos. It's Douglas Costa. I can't stand that man. I want him out of my club. I really try not to be negative towards players,
Sure.
but when you're making that much and the obvious lack of care, and he probably saw my video maybe and like laughed it off, doesn't give a crap. And that's the whole problem. You need players that do give a crap. And,
Mm-hmm.
the only players that I do tend to go after are the ones, at the top of the food chain. I wouldn't go after, your domestic player that, gets called up to the national team and gets S-worded on by the USMNT fanboys. I would never go after a guy like Jordan Morris or Christian Roldan. That's not like me. But the guys that feel like they're way above the league, don't even care. Like I feel like I have a right as a content creator to call them out. And Douglas Costa's, I don't think I've ever hated a player more than Douglas Costa.
Yeah.
I can't stand that man. And, show me a player that's showed less care than he has, because I don't think you can.
No, I don't think you can. I don't think you can. When you look at like the fact that the last two games, at least the last two games I watched him play, where he's just taking players by the shoulder, throwing them down, getting red cards, and
I was
kind
going to
of
say,
just
when were the last two matches he played in? Because
exactly right. Those last two that I
remember.
remember, but like he kind of shrugged it off both times and just said, you know what, it is what it is. And it's like as a teammate, that's got to be one of the worst feelings you can have, because I know I used to hold my teammates accountable, and I don't know, somebody I'm sure on that roster, a captain or somebody else is probably like, I don't know, giving him the lecture of a lifetime. I don't know. At the end of the day,
He's been indirectly called out by Chicharito at a press conference, basically saying, some of us really need to show that they care.
yeah,
And, that's obviously referencing Douglas Costa. And it's so funny because we have him on one end of the spectrum, and then we have Tyler Boyd, who's playing with a broken hand and scoring the match-winning goal with a broken hand. He has a cast on his hand, and he's playing. But then Douglas Costa has a broken ego and hurt feelings, and he's out for 4 to 6 months. Like,
yeah, man. I don't know, man. It's again, maybe he just saw this as like a kind of a right off into the sunset type of signing for him and his career, and expected it to be just a very straightforward gig. I don't know. At the end of the day, Major League Soccer is growing competitively year over year, despite what the MLS haters say. This isn't a league you can just walk into as a quote unquote retirement league that it was in years and years ago. It's evolved, and I feel like it's highly competitive. And to walk in with that type of naive mindset, I don't know. It rubbed me the wrong way, but I'm not a Galaxy fan. I'm an FC Dallas fan. So, at the end of the day, I can only imagine how I would feel if we had one of our players that was kind of walking around and almost berating their own teammates in that way. But I get it, bro. I get it wholeheartedly. All right, man. Let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about where you are with your channels today on this journey to being, a member of the league in a very official way. At some point, I firmly believe you're going to be there. But I imagine on the road to, being who you are today as a creator, dude, there had to be like some stumbling along the way, right? Some hurdles, some obstacles you had to overcome. I think part of this show that I love the most is when creators offer some real insights on how they got around those, right? And so one thing I personally wanted to ask as someone who creates content myself, but I imagine there are others out there. When you come across those moments, right? And you were doing this while completing a journalism degree, right? College is its own full-time job, and you're trying to make it work on the side with content. Like, what was it like juggling all of that, trying to find the balance while keeping the content bar, quality-wise, at a very high level? And what advice would you give maybe to creators who are wanting to be on that same journey?
Yeah. Oh my God. There's so many different things that have gone wrong for me in the past as well. So it's hard to think about. I'm thinking about you when you first said hurdles. The first ones I thought of were like very big mental health hurdles.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot, as like a 18-year-old or something, because the first few years I made content, I didn't really have that big of a following. I think by like year 3 or 4, I had like 3,000 followers, which was, like sick at the time. I was like, this craziest thing ever. I'm like so famous now. And then 2018, it's funny because my blow up happened alongside LAFC joining the league, even though, I'm not a part of that. Um, but some of their players were very nice to me and they've actually helped me in certain ways. But in that year, 2018, 2019 is when I really started to blow up. And then with that, with all the support came a lot of hate, a lot of people disliking me. I wasn't making videos at this time, by the way. I started making videos in the pandemic, which I'll get to in a sec. I was just like posting news. I was just a news account. I would post news, graphics. If you know the Instagram account, All Sports News,
Mm-hmm.
the way that they post the graphics, I just did the same exact thing but for MLS. Not very original, but I always was like, hey, it's for MLS, so no one else is doing it, so it is original. But that's how I started, and I got a lot of hate, especially on Twitter. Even when I wasn't even on Twitter yet, I was just someone who viewed Twitter, and a lot of hate on Reddit, which was, I didn't know about Reddit at the time, and I didn't realize
Yeah.
how awful people could be. And there was even like a This Week in MLS like hate subreddit, and like as an 18-year-old who's like just graduating high school, you're like, what is this? Like, how am I supposed to get through this stuff? Um, and eventually I got that taken down, which is great. But I was not ready for that type of attention mentally, and I broke down many times. I had a very rough first year of college. I don't want to get too much into that. And
Sure.
then in and I got a lot of people like, banning my account on Instagram, like reporting it. So I would
Mm.
go weeks without being able to post. It was like some sort of shadow ban where, I couldn't post for a week because people kept reporting. And that happened like 9 times in 1 year. So that was like
Wow.
which sucked. And then, during my freshman year of college, the pandemic happened. And, mentally I was at like the lowest point in my life, and I hate to be that guy because I know the pandemic was so awful for so many people and so many families, but like the pandemic saved me in so many regards. And it was during the pandemic, during lockdown, where I started to make videos because I had just taken a class on, Premiere base, or it was a class where we made videos and stuff, but we learned it by learning how to use Premiere. And I was like, I looked at myself, I am nowhere where I want to be by the end of college. What can I do now to actually be doing the things that I want to do? And that's when I was like, hey, I want to be on camera. There's no reason for me to do things that aren't on camera. So I started to make my videos, and this is before TikTok. Well, TikTok had blown up, but before IG Reels happened. So I was making, 3 to 5 minute videos, which were great. I had so much fun doing them. It actually showcased my knowledge a bit more than, what the videos I post now showcase, because, I post these 20-second videos now. Don't really share much about how well I know the league, but I just follow the meta, whatever I got to do to continue growing. But those videos were so fun. I would add like little skits at the front and all of that. And then, yeah, the rest is history. Summer of 2021, I hopped on the TikTok, Instagram reel train a bit later than I should have. And I think, I could have been very big on TikTok had I started from the beginning, but because I waited like a year and a half into the hype
Mm-hmm.
to get into TikTok, I have more humble following on there than I maybe would have. But I think with the stuff that I've been putting out recently, I'm starting to catch on a little bit on both Instagram and TikTok again. But definitely hurdles about can I take trolls mentally? And I had, a former soccer player, now he's former, who really helped me like change my mentality and how to deal with trolls, which is great. And nowadays, I'm presented with a whole new set of hurdles I have to go through now. I'm in a better spot mentally than I was then, but life is a lot more stressful now that I'm out of college, and I'm trying to find my next move. And yeah, I have this whole thing about even trying to keep a relationship alive, because can I afford to move in with someone right now?
Yeah.
That's the type of issues and hurdles that I'm going through right now. And it just sucks because, no matter what I'm going through off camera, I have to release my 3 videos a day. I have to, show on camera. I have to be high energetic Eli all the time because that's how everyone knows me as. But, it just sucks that, I don't feel that way right now personally. Like I'm having a very hard time sometimes getting up and, turning on the camera. But, the life goes on and you got to just keep changing, or you got to keep going every single day. So for anyone who's going through those hurdles, if this is what you love, if this is what you love to do, then make sure you're doing it, and make sure that no matter what, you're doing it. During college, I sacrificed my social life, to balance, This Week in MLS and school. I didn't really go out very much during college. I didn't go to that. I mean, freshman year, I did maybe too much, but, after that, once I, started making videos and stuff, weekends, I didn't go out. Saturdays, obviously now with MLS, I just sit on my couch and watch MLS all day.
Yeah.
um, so if this is the thing that makes you happiest, then make sure you're prioritizing doing that, and always prioritizing getting better. Because, I always try to, even if it's the slightest thing to you guys as the viewer, I try to make these changes that feel huge to me every single time, that make my videos just slightly better every single time. So that's the goal. It's like always improving, and, not necessarily being satisfied with where you're at. And, I have people unfortunately, I have to have people hype me up sometimes because I always feel like I'm a failure. Because I'm not at MLS yet, or I'm not, doing this yet, or not doing that. And people bring me back down to earth, be like, hey, Eli, you're doing this, like you're doing that. But for me, it's like never enough in a way,
Yeah.
which I think is a double-edged sword.
Yeah, bro. And look, I will say this. I'm hearing you say all of these things, and I think that I think the viewers will appreciate that level of honesty, right? Of the bar you kind of hold for yourself. I heard 2 really big things there. One, you mentioned getting better with your content every day, right? If your content even gets 1% better with every day that you're posting, that's 300+% improvement on the year, right? So you kind of keep that mentality going, and you're kind of good. But the second thing, the one that really stood out to me, it almost brought back a saying that a mentor of mine, it's like etched in my brain forever. He told me a long time ago, because when I had my own mental obstacles to overcome, it was cultivate discipline, not motivation. Because my complaint was always that, when times get rough mentally, I lack the motivation to keep going, to be consistent with my work or do whatever I got to do. And he told me, cultivate discipline, not motivation. When you're not motivated, discipline will take over. Your consistency will take over, and it will allow you to keep being you and keep doing the things that you do, even when you don't feel the most motivated to do it. And look, man, I'll hype you up all day. I think you're miles ahead of where any given creator is probably, on this side of the world promoting MLS. I think at some point, MLS is going to embrace this new wave of, I think, what was everybody calling it now? New media, where legacy media is kind of having to scoot over on the seat a little bit, right, and make room for all these independent content creators who are drawing audiences and communities and building them up in a way that the league just hasn't been able to do on their own. I think at some point, right, when I see Alexis from the Cooligans on Paramount doing, the CBS Colossal Network doing any one of their shows, going to Champions League finals and whatnot, like at some point we're going to see more of that. I think that when MLS starts to get on that train, I think creators like yourselves are going to be kind of top of the list, right, in terms of who they could possibly work with, man. So I
Yeah.
think personally, man, keep going. I think anybody who's listening to this today will resonate with that message also, because even if you won't tell yourself that, I'll be happy to tell you that you are miles ahead of where creators like myself or anybody else is on this path to making, creating whatever our dream scenario is going to be, right?
Yeah, I think, one thing that's like kind of holding me back, which is like I'm very angry about kind of is, no one trusts a recent college grad. And I feel like that kind of degrades me in a way because I have been making content for 8 years. And I literally started when I did start because I was at that broadcasting camp. I was terrified when they said like all these jobs are expecting 5 to 10 years of experience once you graduate. And I took that literally. And I was like, as a 50-year-old, I was like, oh my God, I need 10 years of experience. Oh my God. So it just sucks that, no one trusts a college grad to do any big things, or like a recent college grad. So that's another thing kind of holding others back, maybe that I've had talks with about maybe hiring me, just no one's ready for the young guy. Um,
Not yet. Not
Not
yet.
yet, but I'm just kind of waiting for that thing. But I do look at a guy like Alexis, like that's stuff that I want to be doing. There's a guy also at Paramount named Marco who started IFTV, which is an Italian football thing,
Yep.
and because he's a Serie A guy, that's what he does for Paramount and for Serie A is that's who I want to be for MLS because he was the guy that like started a fan channel, started an account, an Instagram account and stuff for a specific league. And now he's being embraced by that league and he's at the top of his game covering the league. And, I want MLS to be able to take a chance on a guy like that for the league. And, your boys right here. I think Marco specifically is someone that like a lot of independent creators should look up to. And I think not a lot of people know about, just that type of story, or they've just seen him on Paramount Plus and like, who's this random fan from New Jersey,
Yeah,
Um,
100%, bro. And that's a great point you just made, though. I know we're kind of getting close to time a little bit here, but I'm curious personally. When you broke into video,
Mhm.
you mentioned Marco. We talked about Alexis. There's so many others like them, at least to an extent. Was there anyone that you were watching or kind of flocked to in the earliest days of your video creation that you're like, dude, I want to do stuff like him or them?
Yeah, so I actually have someone that whose career path I want to model myself off of in the MLS space, who I started following her actually before I made videos, but Rachel Bonetta, who
Yeah.
is so she started as a social media host for Toronto FC, then she became a social media host for MLS, and then she did a bunch of stuff at MLS, and now all of a sudden she's hosting shows on Fox Sports. Um, it's stuff that's the type of ambition that I have for myself. I just really need to get to that first step, and then oh my god. Oh yeah, in terms of MLS content, and it might make sense if you know who this is and have seen maybe some of my vlogs or stuff. But one person I really want to model my game after is Jesser, the YouTuber, who
Hmm.
is a big basketball YouTuber, NBA YouTuber. And, he's someone that I grew up loving to watch. And, if I could be some sort of Jesser for MLS, that's already beyond a lot of the expectations I have for myself. I mean, I grew up watching the Sidemen and stuff as well. But, Jesser, he's the guy that has the exclusive access at NBA things. He's who I did at 3 MLS matches in 24 hours. I took that video off him, gave him credit, of course. And, just as like a inspiration thing, I wanted to try it for myself. And, if I could be anything like him, especially for like the younger demographic that I cater my content to, like that would be just so incredible. But yeah, if you don't know who Jesser is, big NBA YouTuber or NBA basketball content guy and does some stuff with the NBA. But he is independent because he can be. It's a lot tougher for an MLS creator to make a full career independent just because of the size of the league and stuff. So I'm really trying my best to expand that, but that's why I'm so set on getting a job somewhere, because I feel like if I can't get a job within the next 2 years in MLS, I won't be doing this at Weekend MLS anymore because I just won't be able to.
Yeah, I mean, you got to sustain yourself, right? At the end of the day, like that, at some point, everybody's got that I don't want to say a breaking point, right? But a point where it just either makes sense or it doesn't. And so I think that, look, man, you got a ton of experience as a fan, as a content creator. And I feel like your story, how you got brought into this game, it's got to be relatable to so many fans, especially the newer ones, right? Those who just discovered soccer and why it's taking over in a big way. We're still, we're still maybe what, a top 4, top 5 sport in this country, but it's going to get bigger. It's going to get better. Before I let you go today, I'm really kind of curious. You've been around this league for a long time. You've been creating content now for a while. I ask some variation of this question every time I have a guest on the show. From your perspective, you've seen the league grow year over year.
Yes.
And you follow other sports as well. What's it going to take for soccer to be top 3, top 2 sport in this country?
Yeah, I think my answer might also be different than other people just because of how I got into the sport. But, I'm not that guy that's like, oh, promotion relegation must happen, make or break the league. I actually don't care. That's, my love of the sport comes from the league more than, the structure of European soccer and, making that, the reality. I don't really care about that stuff.
Yeah.
Do I sometimes use it for views? Yes. But I don't really care about that stuff. For me, and what helped me get into it was, it's getting people into the seats at stadiums. Going to a match, there's nothing like it. You can't replicate it in other sports. I know college football. I mean, I didn't really go to a big college football school, so I didn't really feel that vibe. But college football is like the closest thing to really getting that sort of fan action. Seeing a supporter section in action for the first time just blew my mind as someone who didn't know anything about soccer or attending matches.
Yep.
Seeing that type of stuff, seeing that passion from fans. The second you go to an MLS match, you will get hooked into it. I could absolutely guarantee it. It's so different, like hockey. It's so different actually going to the match than watching it on TV. It's so much better when you're actually able to be there. And so I think for me, it's just seat by seat. The more people that you could get into a stadium, the more people that are going to believe in it, because hopefully they see what I saw when I first attended Galaxy matches and stuff like that. And it's even happening with Angel City right now with the women's league. All it takes is to actually go to a game and sit there. I know not everyone can afford a game, which is the harsh reality, but also, there's so many ways that you could win tickets and all that stuff. There's tons of giveaways. A lot of amazing families and stuff buy a bunch of tickets just to give them out to people for free. I know, think about Darmir Krylock at Real Salt Lake. He has a whole section just of, people of tickets that he gives to underprivileged youth to get them in the game. That's what it's really going to take. And, the earlier you could start bringing kids and people to games, that's where the passion really grows. And that's how the sport's going to grow and become a top 3. Cause I think it will be a top 3 league eventually. That's how I think it will happen.
Yeah.
And then also Messi. That
Messi coming to Miami. Yeah, 100%, bro. I think we get the GOAT in MLS. It's going to be really hard for this thing not to really grow. But at the end of the day, time, local support. I'll go back to what you said at the very beginning of the show, man. Not even there's an MLS club, if there's a USL club, if there's an NWSL club, if you have local soccer in your area, and I know some flyover states don't really have that, and that's fine. But if you do have it, and you're just choosing not to support because they're not Arsenal, they're not Barcelona, they're not Real Madrid, that to me is a giant missed opportunity. Go support. You'd actually be surprised at the quality of the ball they play. And I think that all it takes is for 2, 3, 10, 20 fans to start really getting out there. And before you know it, a movement's already taking place, right? So I wholeheartily agree, man. If you have local soccer in your area, try to prioritize it, try to get out to a game or two. You'll probably enjoy it more than you think, even if you're not a diehard, fan like some of us are. So anyway, Eli, this was great, man. Thank you so much for being on the show today, bro. I think we learned a ton about your journey. I think we're all rooting for you on this path to making content creation a full-time opportunity with a major studio, a major organization out there. We'll see how it all pans out. And hopefully we get you back on the show when that does happen. and we'll get kind of that first, that first look at what it's like now to transition from independent content creation to doing it for someone bigger, man. I can't wait.
Hopefully it happens sooner rather than later. And I had such a joy. So thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. All right, we're able to at the end of the episode. Thank you so much. We appreciate you. As I mentioned before, I'll link everything Eli Lesser and This Week in MLS down in the description down below. Go check him out. A lot of content there to consume. And from everybody here at Box to Box, my name is Jose. That's Eli. We'll see you guys next time.